A very good morning to each and every one of you on the call this morning. Thank you for joining us for the second edition of the Local and Sustainable Construction Practices in South Africa webinar. I am Alicia Logan and I head up the membership department at Proudly South African. It gives me great pleasure to be in your company this morning and also, really pleased that we have industry experts on the call this morning that will be guiding us on the one of the largest sectors in South Africa and how localization is shaping the construction industry. Before I hand you over to any of our speakers, I would like to give you a little bit of a background into why we're having a second edition, of the sustainable construction webinar. The construction industry or the South African construction sector is a crucial driver of socio-economic development and a key driver for employment in South Africa. As Proudly South African, as most of you know, our tagline is buy local to create jobs. So we are heavily invested in sectors that contribute largely to the employment rate in South Africa. Just to give you a little bit of background, into the construction industry. In 2021, the industry employed over 1.2 million people and contributed an added value of approximately 111 billion to the GDP. The South African construction industry or market size was evaluated at about $25.1 billion in 2023 and expected to achieve about 3% growth from current period right up to 2027 in a sector that is seeing positive growth amidst economic challenges, and a sector that is largely involved in creating employment for South Africans. It is important for us to understand how localization can further enhance growth in the sector. So, we are invested in understanding then how this sector can further create, employment by using methods of localization or localizing the supply chain within the construction industry to ensure that we see greater growth in employment numbers and greater use of local methods within the sector. So this morning we have subject matter experts on the call. And I'm going to allow each and every one of them to enlighten you on the localization techniques that are possibly some old, some new, and how these localization techniques are adding value to the construction sector and how if sort of used correctly or applied correctly can even create more jobs within the sector. So our first speaker this morning is from Max Steel. As you know, Max Steel is one of the leading employers in the sector that we are speaking about today, and one of the leading steel manufacturers and distributors countrywide. We have Franco Modini from Max Steel, who is going to talk to us about the use of local construction materials and how this has enhanced the construction sector in South Africa. Franco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction. My name is Franco Mordini. I'm a civil engineer by training. So I've worked with the consultants, I've worked with contractors. Now, in the last 20 years, I've been in basically the steel industry. I am a product specialist at Max Steel for tube and pipe. So obviously, I'm going to be slanting my discussion towards the steel side, So basically, steel is a fundamental part of construction. You obviously are aware that it's got some advantages. It's one of the preferred um, construction products. And the advantage is that it can be prefabricated off-site, taken to site, and erected very quickly on the site. So that's a big advantage. Regarding the environmental aspects, steel has realized that it needs to improve its position in the market. So they're doing a lot of work to improve the production processes so that they are more environmentally friendly. And this, hence, you probably have heard of the discussion about green steels. So green steels is all about making steel more cost effectively and environment in a way that is environmentally more friendly. In South Africa, we have a couple of steel suppliers. The biggest one is AMSA. We have got a number of other suppliers and quite a few mini mills that have been operating in the last 5-10 years. Now, one of the things that is currently a hot topic is that AMSA have decided that they've threatened to close their long steel products division, which would mean that they would close the operations that do angles, I-beams, channels, universal columns, flat bars, those type of products. So that currently is a hot debate now. Why are they closing? It's a very, very good question. There's a couple of factors that count against them at this point in time. The price of scrap is artificially low, and it's obviously a big advantage for the mini mills because a lot of the mini mills only use recycled steel for it. So it is a big advantage for them. Another part that's increased the cost for AMSA is the fact that the rail infrastructure has deteriorated a lot, and hence they've had to move their raw materials by road, which is a lot more expensive. And obviously the cost of electricity. With this potential closing, the other mini mills have realized that they need to look at increasing their capacity and increasing their sizes, because there's a lot of sizes that are made by AMSA that are not made by many of these mini mills. So we would, in fact, we would have to import quite a few substantial amount of products from overseas because they wouldn't be made locally. But Maxtel is one of the strongest advocates of buying locally. But however, we obviously realize that we can't let industry come to a standstill. So if we need to import, we will import sizes that are not available locally. Now, there's another interesting point about localization, and that is tariffs. There's lots of talk about tariffs at this point in time. I think that we're all aware that Trump is putting tariffs on just about everything that is sent to America. So that's a very interesting debate. And if you look at the stock markets, it's obviously not going down well in many respects, because you'll only bear the benefits in the long term, because in the short term your costs are going to go up. So the point is, why do you introduce tariffs? It's to make imported products more expensive and make local products more competitive. But now there's an overcapacity of steel in the world. So now that America, Europe, and they're all putting countermeasures and counter tariffs, what will happen is that there'll be a lot of spare capacity, and the danger for us in South Africa is that basically the Chinese will see, and others will see, South Africa as a dumping ground. So that is a very big threat for us. And I'm sure that you're all aware that the Chinese industries are subsidized quite substantially, indirectly often, by government. So they are starting off with an advantage against us in the local market. So they are actively, and that's how they've grown their steel market, is that they've exported their steels to America, to Europe, to everywhere that you can think of. And that has given them economies of scale. So they certainly become a very big potential threat for us. Now, another very important thing is that if we go ahead with introducing tariffs, we also need to make sure that we introduce tariffs right across the supply chain, so that basically you don't have downstream products being imported. So at the moment, ITAC is doing a very important investigation on tariffs. And what they're doing is they're asking for comments. So, everybody, the public at large, is free to submit any form of submissions. So yes, it's an important point. But coming back to potential closure of AMSA, another important thing that we need to consider is that if they do close, we may need to relook at what sizes we make available in South Africa. And there are some that are touting maybe we should introduce some European sections in the local menu for engineers. So now the Institute of Steel Construction has put together a committee to look at just this and to see whether we should basically reconstitute the menu that we use in the local market. And one thing that I want to say about local products and local fabricators, I'm one of the Steel Awards judges, and I've been for quite a few years. And what I want to tell the public at large is that we have lost some skills in the industry, but I can assure you that our engineers and our fabricators are still world class. We're still able to export material to different parts of the world, and the quality has not gone down. So we have comfort that basically the current steel supply is in place. It is under threat, but it is in place, and that the quality of our work is substantial and very, very quality orientated. And that, a lot of the people want to deal with South Africans. The Australians want to deal with South Africans. There's a lot of African countries that want to deal with us. So we need to look at exports very, very importantly, because the local economy currently is not giving us enough demand so that we can actually have a thriving industry. So in conclusion, local steel products should and will be supported the local suppliers will be supported wherever possible. However, we also need to take care that we cannot get the industry or let the industry come to a standstill. So if we need to import, we're going to have to import due to the closure of AMSA. And where they don't have where the local suppliers don't have the capability or the size range, we also need to look at they've taken measures to make sure that the wheels of the industry don't come to an end. Implementation of tariffs, obviously very tricky. I think everybody needs to put their thoughts together to see, what we should do. So we also, as I said, on the crossroads about the sizes that we offer in the local market. As Eunice mentioned, very importantly, we do need to have a thriving construction sector. Jobs are created, large amount of jobs are created there. We need to look at that and actually create jobs wherever possible. It's critical to all of us. If AMSA closes, there's 3,500 jobs on the line. But if the steel sector should be affected, it will be hundreds of thousands of people affected. So we definitely want to promote the industry as such. As a last point, Maxsteel is totally committed to buying locally. We would only buy import where absolutely necessary, and where the supply dynamics are not in the favor of only local supply. And as I said, it's fundamental to create jobs and to create a sustainable steel sector that will thrive and prosper and say again, and create jobs. Thank you very much.
Franco, thank you so much for that. I have a question for you. This is actually a question directly from myself, and then I'll take one from the chat box. So, the South African steel industry is crucial for the construction industry. It's a hand in glove scenario. But based on what you've said, there's significant amount of challenges in the industry from, high production costs to intense competition from imports. Can we then, or can I ask, is Max Steel then relying on your, technology and your engineers to stay at the forefront of, the competitive landscape?
Well, I think that we're doing two things. Obviously, we do have manufacturing facilities that produce steel products like tubes and lip
Mhm.
channels. So obviously, we still have those type of that type of technology that is leading. So it certainly will put us in a good position. We obviously importantly need to make sure that we supply the industry what they need. So the important thing is to I won't say at whatever cost, but it's important that we keep the supply chain going smoothly. I think that's the most important thing. And obviously analyzing trends in the world, seeing what grades of steel are being substituted, raising the level, also, what we also, because one thing that I actually did not mention and needs some mentioning is that we are in the process of developing quality systems because we know that the industry is so critical to us that we cannot afford to have substandard steels going into the market. And currently, there is especially in the informal sector, still that is not particularly of high quality, which we don't really get involved in. But the quality aspect needs to be focused on, and we need to compete on quality.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. This question this is from social media. So I'm just going to construct it. It's quite a long question, but let me try to simplify. You mentioned that there's not enough demand in the local market. Is this because of imports, or is there generally a lack of great demand in the local market for steel?
It's mainly related to the actual construction industry. You don't see as much work going out in the general construction industry. Mining is still strong, for example, that's still going pretty well. Some of the manufacturing sectors are still going strong, but the general engineering is taking a lot of strain. And I think that's also because the consumer is under massive pressure. He hasn't got much to spend, and also confidence in the South African economy. We need more confidence for people to invest in this country. One of the things that I came across last year is that we make approval of projects so much more longer than what they need to be. So we need to shorten the process from project start to project end. But yeah, the demand is unfortunately not there in the general construction market. And
All right.
obviously, one thing that has affected it is that our exports have also not been particularly good. But the poor quality of steel is a factor in the market. The imports of bad quality steel or low quality steel, it does affect us as Max Steel. Max Steel does operate on a quality basis, so we don't buy any inferior steels, sometimes to our detriment, but we believe that we've got to keep the standard of steel, the quality of steel high in South Africa, and that's what we aim for.
Thank you so much. The last question is related to, export. So without politicizing this, we understand where we are with the US market currently, but do you feel like there's a lot of positivity coming from other countries for importing of steel from South Africa, like other African countries, especially the SADC countries, and maybe some of the European countries?
Yeah, it's a very good question. we find that the guys that are exporting have got probably have niche markets where they do export. So they've got a very good reputation in general where they're exporting to. So we are securing quite a big portion of projects where quality is essential. And also we do know that the Chinese, for example, not to slam them unnecessarily, but in Australia, for example, they used to get very poor quality steel structures imported from China. And we know that the Australians like to deal with us because we have good quality. Price is obviously one of the issues that we need to address because the Chinese obviously export on at very low cost.
All right. Thank you so much, Franco. You've been really amazing. Thank you for that presentation. If there's any other questions, I will let you know. But yes, thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. So we move on to our next speaker, Monroe Jensen, who's from Infra Consult Engineering. Monroe will be talking to us about sustainable and local construction techniques, basically bringing it back to localization. Franco, thank you for joining. Monroe, thank you for joining us this morning. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, ma'am, and good morning to colleagues online. I've prepared a presentation. Let me just go into share mode, if you give me a moment. I'm not sure if the presentation is visible to you, ma'am.
Yes, it is visible. Maybe if you want to put it, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Just want to do something else outside. Yes. Good morning, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present. Yes. In line with the theme of sustainable and local construction techniques, our company has been our niche market is mostly human settlements and infrastructure development. We are a professional civil engineering and project management company who deals with the infrastructure development, specifically for human settlement development, new housing endeavors, residential complexes, etc. So I think my presentation today is in line with my experience as a civil engineer over 25 years, in line with delivery of services such as new roads, stormwater, sewer, sanitation, water reticulation, etc. So just briefly, an overview. Yes, we will discuss a few local sustainable construction techniques used in our industry, specifically building and infrastructure. We'll look at some techniques. Some of these techniques are not specifically unique to South Africa, but some of them have become what I would almost say they found a home in South Africa, and they've become so prevalent in the application that you could say these are probably South African techniques. Even though, if you look back at the history, some of them have come around, have been around for many years, and have come from other regions other than South Africa, but they are so prevalent in their use and application. We will also touch on some of the sustainable materials. I've discussed the company background, and what I would like to do for the panel is just to do a brief case study of a project that we've done, where some of these techniques were used as methods and materials going into construction. So without any further ado, in the building sector, we are all aware of the clay brick. The usage, this is a staple usage in South Africa for centuries. They are widely used in both residential and commercial buildings. Why is it unique to South Africa? As I've said, it's so prevalent, and South Africa has an abundant clay resource, and the production of bricks is well established as an industry in our country. The country's warm climate makes brick an ideal building material for its thermal properties, insulation, and cooling. If you look at the environmental considerations, local clay brick production is also sustainable in terms of cost and energy usage. We also look at the use of earth blocks, CEBs, as we call it in our sector. CEBs are used as an alternative to conventional fired bricks, especially in rural and low-cost or more affordable housing projects. It's made from soil, cement, and sometimes sand, and these type of bricks are well suited for the South African diverse soils and are widely used in affordable housing schemes, as I've mentioned earlier. Environmental considerations, CEBs have a lower carbon footprint than fired bricks and are produced on-site, reducing transportation and environmental impact going forward. These are just some applications. There we've got what we call a wattle and daub. That is one of the older usage of clay and mud, but these are still being used quite recently. Cement stabilized soil blocks. These are the modern blocks that we use, maxi bricks as they are normally called. It's unique to South Africa. Also, again, the type of soil that we have available, environmental considerations as the clay brick. It is, you can also make this on-site. If you have your mega housing projects that we are normally involved with, we have a brick producing plant on site where transportation and it makes it more energy efficient. You've got the brick. The older beaten earth floors, that's just an example of clay and using earth as a resource to build concrete floors, not concrete floors, but earth floors. We are all aware of the thatch roofing. This is a traditional homes, lodges, and some luxury resorts that we are using it in. It is unique to South Africa. This is part of our South African footprint, architectural heritage, and our common in rural and cultural areas, as well as in ecotourism. Environmental considerations, thatch roofing uses natural materials like grass, which are renewable and biodegradable, making it friendly when sourced sustainably. Timber, again, just like thatched roof, you can't have one without the other. There you have a nice example of how these are applied. And then concrete. This is very traditional use in South Africa. It comes on for decades now that concrete and concrete blocks are used. There are some environmental considerations that one should look at. However, as I've mentioned below, the cement industry in South Africa is working toward more sustainable practices, including incorporating fly ash into concrete mixes. We all are aware or should be aware of the green concrete movement that we're seeing recently, where concrete incorporates recycled materials such as fly ash, slag, or crushed recycled concrete aggregates. It's used for general construction, including roads, foundations, pavements, etc. And I think that is to make it more environmentally acceptable. My colleague has spoken about the steel industry. In building practices, steel reinforcement is used normally when you deal with foundations, etc. Also on large projects such as your dams and bridges, steel reinforcement is quite heavily used. It's not unique in South Africa, but it's very, very prevalent. And we've got big companies such as where my colleague is from, and ArcelorMittal, etc., that supply steel. Environmental considerations, although steel production is energy intensive, South Africa is beginning to see more initiatives for the recycling of steel, which helps to lower the overall environmental impact. Here is some applications of within the human settlements or building sector. we use steel in what we call raft foundations. This is a reinforced concrete slab under the hull of a building or extension, which is basically what we call floating on the ground as a raft floats on water. That's just an example where steel is used in concrete. This is then a final product where concrete and steel, as we call it, reinforced concrete raft foundations. In the infrastructure services sector, there are some materials that are not unique, as I've said, but very prevalent in the construction sector. Stones such as sandstone, granite, and marble, because of the widely availability of these resources, these are normally used in either structural sectors or road construction, etc. We are all aware of the use of gabion baskets, where, for argument's sake, your stone, as I've mentioned earlier, as a resource is crushed, dump rock is made from this stone, it's placed into gabion baskets, and it has a wide array of applications, whether it's in stormwater, roads, bridges. I think most of us have seen these type of structures traveling the roads of South Africa, but this is just a typical application of gabion baskets. Recycled asphalt is a phenomenon that has been widely used, and we're moving away from the traditional concrete and only asphalt because of environmental considerations. So yeah, it's asphalt and concrete that are increasingly used in construction of roads and other infrastructure projects. By using these recycled materials, the environmental considerations means that we're reducing the demand for new raw materials and lowers the carbon footprint of these construction projects. That's just an example of the top layer will be your conventional asphalt, but in this case, it will be recycled asphalt with your lower layers of stone, or what we call macadam base course material, just to provide the structural stability for roads. But I think this is commonly used on freeways and also in your residential developments. We are all aware of the UPVC pipes, your polyvinyl chloride pipes, plumbing, drainage, stormwater. It's not unique, but it's widely used in South Africa. And it's also manufactured. There are companies in South Africa that manufacture these PVC pipes. There is environmental considerations. It's very durable. There's a long lifespan. Its production is energy intensive. However, recycling initiatives are underway to reduce waste. These are just some applications under water and sanitation, but you can also use it for road, for stormwater applications. HDPE, again, very good material, especially when it comes to dolomitic area or land that is underlain with dolomite. Most local authorities will request that you specify as an engineer HDPE piping material to be used because of its leak-proof characteristics. So there you can see the geotechnical applications. It's also used in landfill as landfill liners. Environmental considerations, just the same as UPVC, it's recyclable and its durability reduces the need for frequent replacement, contributing to sustainability in infrastructure projects. There's a big shift now. If you can recall that in the past, the use of asbestos clay material was quite prevalent, but we know that that is currently seen as destructive, and most of the asbestos pipelines that were laid many years ago for water reticulation, etc., sewer reticulation, are currently being removed by many local authorities and being replaced by your more durable UPVC or HDPE pipes. That's just applications. On the right-hand side, you can see machines welding. These pipes are installed by butt welding, as we call it in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief case study on a development that we've done on a dolomitic piece of land. As we know, dolomitic land are prone to the formation of sinkholes. These dolomitic areas are prevalent in 5 out of 9 of our South African provinces, as indicated there. Just to give you an indication, you'll see that the circles show where the rock formation is, and in the middle between these rock formations, that's where your cave-ins or fractures normally occur. And this occurs as a result of water seeping or leaking into the pipes, leaking or water seeping, or even your lowering of your water table. And this creates cave-ins or caves where ground falls into, and it's very, very quickly sinkholes are formed. And I just give a brief description of how sinkholes are formed. I don't want to go into too much detail. I think a picture tells 1,000 tales. There you've got an idea where you've got a leak from your house, where you've got underlain by dolomite. Water seeps into these cave-ins, erodes between the dolomite rock formations, and you form these fractures, and sinkholes form, and it could be detrimental. Where houses, as you can see at the picture below, many years ago, a house and a family of 5 was swallowed by a sinkhole in 1962. Very recently, you can see damage to structures. If you drive onto the R21 a few months ago, you would have seen quite a lot of work on the road itself, just close to Kempton Park on the East Rand, where sinkholes were formed. So it's quite detrimental to the environment. What has happened recently is that there's some latest codes and policies that regulate the development of any structures on dolomitic ground conditions. This is contained within the South African National Standards Codes, SANS 1936. And for us as consulting civil engineers who design these type of infrastructure, Part 3, as you can see at the bottom there, the design and construction of building structures and infrastructure. That is our code that we use and strictly apply when we work on areas that are underlain by dolomite. So my brief case study is a land that was developed on dolomitic, the development on dolomitic land. Many years ago, it's consisting of about just over 3,000 affordable housing units, just on the south of Johannesburg. On the installation of water reticulation, the SANS 1936 requests that you have leak-proof piping installed, normally what we call UPVC or MPVC. There is a higher grade of UPVC pipes were required to be installed. And just to give you an idea, the total installed for this area was close to 26 kilometers of pipes for the total area. This is your MPVC Vitolic joint couplings. These pipes, as I've said, is strictly specified by SANS, and it's better than UPVC because your jointing is with Vitolic couplings, and it makes it leak-proof. The installation of sewer, SANS allows either HDPE or UPVC. But when you use UPVC, your main core pipes for sewer, you must ensure that your couplings are properly welded and that there's no leaks and properly tested. And that was done, and a total of 43 kilometers of pipes were laid. Installation of the stormwater, normally your OG concrete pipes would be used, but in this case, SANS requires that you use spigot and socket because it has a rubber ring, and it at the joints, and make sure that there's no leakage into underground structures. The roads, we used asphalt and the macadam, as I've showed you earlier, the macadam base. Almost 26 kilometers of roads were constructed. The 3,033 housing units, just to give you an idea of the concrete used, just over 75,000 tons of concrete were used. to build the foundations, the steel that went into the foundations and even into your walls, just over 1,100 tons of steel. The soil, cement bricks, your maxi bricks, just over 11.5 million bricks used to build these houses. Just to give you an idea of the summary of the outcomes, the total development cost was just over 450 million rand. This is just on the services and the building of the houses. Project time was almost 2 years. Local SMMEs appointed over the 2 years. 15 local SMMEs were appointed from the local community, and jobs created were just over 1,500 local unskilled to semi-skilled labor use. So that just gives you an idea of the magnitude of these projects and how the products, local products were used, and also the eventual benefit to the local community. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Monroe, thank you so much for that presentation. Very heartwarming to see jobs being created, not just in the local market, but also regionally in in and around construction sites. I think that is so important. Just one question for myself before we move on to our next speaker. So, like the steel industry has a multitude of challenges, so too does the brick production sector. So with issues around unsustainable mining practices, environmental degradation, I know that we have reduced reserves of high quality clay. Do you think this has impacted supply and demand, and in terms of higher prices when there's lower reserves?
No, definitely. If you look at the current trend in your housing construction and human settlement sectors as in large, there is quite a dip in, if you look at a few years ago, just after 2010 and even before 2010, nationally, one would have seen that the number of houses built by national and provincial human settlement departments, together with obviously your private sector plays a big role in that, but together with your private sector, was in the region of 15 to 20,000 houses a year. That's nationally. Now, and it's quite sad, we've gone down to very close to 4,500, if not less, to 5,000 houses a year. So yes, there, and obviously it's not only the supply of materials and the challenges that we have there. There's other challenges that also contribute to that. But to answer your question, yes, there is a big issue. That is why I think developers are looking at more, as I've mentioned earlier, more sustainable ways of producing material. Recycling, I think recycling is very important. And I think that is what we'll see more and more as this sector develops. But yes, we are in quite a dip at the moment in terms of supply.
Yes, I think that the specifically with regards to raw material in your sector, the circular economy is absolutely necessary for sustainability.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, Monroe. If there's any other questions, I will direct it to you, but thank you very much for that presentation.
No problem. Thanks, man.
Thank you. So our next speaker will take us through the knowing our local brands, growing the buy local economy, and of course supporting localization. So I'll hand over to our very own CEO, Eustace Mashembe. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making the time to join us this morning. I also have a presentation that I've prepared, and we'll take you through the slides and to give you a good sense of what this Buy Local campaign is about and how you can make it your business to help grow the economy through supporting localization efforts and in line with what was presented by the two panelists before me, who I'm very thankful for. So the country battles three challenges, and apologies, this was touched on earlier, especially with the example given by Franco around what the impact would be if the likes of AMSA or ArcelorMittal of South Africa closes one of its main sites, and that jobs will be lost. But it's about livelihoods, and this adds to the unemployment and the poverty in the country. And if you think of the Proudly SA logo as you see it, it really embodies the values of products that are made in South Africa, and it's made up of the colors of the flag of the Republic of South Africa, telling you instantly that you're about to buy a product that is made in South Africa. And so what we are responsible for as Proudly South African is to ensure that products like those that are made in South Africa are the ones that are chosen by those who make purchasing decisions, whether they buy for the public sector, the private sector, or even as ordinary consumers. And I think I've touched on the importance of localization, albeit briefly, that when you buy that which is made in South Africa, especially if you think of an industry like this that is labor intensive, if you think of construction and related industries, very labor intensive. So whenever there are projects that are rolled out, it's not only the labor that does the actual construction work, but it's everything across the value chains, as touched on by my fellow panelists, whether it's steel components, whether it's cement, and other material that is then utilized in construction projects. And if we buy those locally, we are adding to the jobs that are already existing, and over and above that, retaining existing jobs. And those who are employed in those industries will then acquire skills, and their living standards will also improve, and you'll see an increased contribution to the GDP. I thought this slide better unpacks what the impact of localization or supporting or implementing local sustainable practices would be. We undertook a research that looked at the impact of increasing our investment in manufacturing as well as its subsectors, just medium-term results. So, and the increase, according to the study, was what the impact would be if we just increase 10% of activity in manufacturing, obviously supported and driven by 10% increased consumption of locally made products. And so just with 10% increase in how we manufacture and how we invest in manufacturing and consume locally made products, you will see a 13% increase increased contribution to the GDP. 10% increase would see us have 9% increase in fiscal revenue as a result of more people paying taxes, whether it's individuals who are employed by the businesses or those companies who are doing well will then be increasing what they are paying by way of taxes. You will then have an estimated 75,300 jobs created in manufacturing, 11,500 of these in mining and 10,100 in agriculture, as a result of the multiplier effect, in that manufacturing itself will then rely on other industries to provide it with its raw materials and the components and other stuff that is required to help ensure that those products are made in South Africa. So overall, there will be an 8% increase in employment creation. So imagine 8% increase in employment creation with just increased activity up to 10%. So imagine what it would be with 20% and 30% increased investment. And with the country now heading towards implementing increased infrastructure projects, both mentioned by both the president as well as the Minister of Finance in their respective speeches. That is going to be an area in the country that will present endless opportunities for localization and for support for those who are part of the value chains in infrastructure projects, particularly manufacturers of all of those components that go into infrastructure projects. And so the focus of Proudly South African is to look at buying done by the public sector, buying done by the private sector, what are ordinary consumers buying, and to ensure that those who want to buy local can easily access locally made products. And I touched on this briefly to say, when you look at the Proudly SA logo, it embodies a few values. The first one being that the product itself carries local content. So companies that want to affiliate with us go through a vetting process, and we check that the local content that is included in those products goes to the extent of even the raw materials themselves, where they're available in the country being sourced in South Africa. Where we're talking about services, the intention is to ensure that in rendering those services, what is utilized are consumables and equipment and other material that is sourced in South Africa. So local content is quite critical, and that vetting process helps us and to confirm what consumers will see when they see a proudly SA logo on the product, and because they see the colors of the flag of the Republic of South Africa, they assume that they're buying a made in South Africa product. So we do that vetting to check that local content level to ensure that jobs are created. In instances where those raw materials are not available in the country, and they have to be brought in from outside. We want the value addition to happen in South Africa. We don't want finished products to be affiliated with us in any way, because then that means the opportunity for jobs to be created as part of that value addition or conversion of those raw materials into the final product will have been lost. And secondly, we check that the quality is as required and is as prescribed for that specific industry. And different industries have different regulations and different standards that products and services in those standards must adhere to. We check that there is compliance with those standards. Thirdly, companies that affiliate with us must help ensure that they help us preserve the environment. I mean, the session today also talks about sustainable practices. So for us, it's about, do you recycle? Do you dispose of waste responsibly? Do you reuse the waste where possible? And to help us, through your practices, reduce the carbon footprint in the country. And members of PALISAF can, make commitments and declarations to the effect that they will continue doing those, practices and to help us preserve the environment. But lastly, members of PALISAF can have to ensure that they comply with the labor legislation of the country. In the course of doing business, they must ensure that when they employ people, they adhere to things like the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and just treat their workers fairly. So if you think of the business support ecosystem, not necessarily SMME support only, but business support ecosystem, everyone doing business in the country wants access to funding, to information, to ways in they have to comply with statutory obligations. They have to comply with various other practices. They want non-financial support. But the most important, which sits at the heart of any support ecosystem for businesses, is access to markets. And so as PALISAF we give an opportunity to those with locally made products that have been vetted to us to access different markets that they're looking for. And this includes existing products, new entrants, as well as transformed entities. And some of the ways in which we do that is looking at where consumers are buying, and this is from a B2C and a B2B perspective. It is estimated that by 2022, we had already spent about 55 billion rands on online platforms, and that by 2026, we will hit the 100 billion mark. And so, as part of South Africa, we think that this is an opportunity that has to be taken for those with products that will do well on these platforms. What we have done is we have created partnerships with existing platforms, B2B and B2C platforms. And this includes the popular ones like Pop Shop and Takealot, One Day Only, and Macro Marketplace, and BizMed, which is a medical marketplace for businesses to buy, for their own clinics and hospitals and healthcare facilities. And so what we've done is we've created this partnership such that our members can list on these platforms at no additional cost to them. And over and above that, I'm pleased to announce that tomorrow, the 1st of April, not an April Fool's joke, we are launching our own e-commerce platform. We are switching it on. It will be live on the Proudly SA website. So if you want to buy anything made in South Africa, you can go onto the Proudly SA site and go to our online store and buy what you're looking for that is made in South Africa. And that is part of our drive to ensure that locally made products are easily accessible to consumers. We are going to switch on the B2B capability. So currently it's going to be a platform that allows businesses to sell to consumers, but the next step will be businesses will be able to sell to other businesses. Later on, we are also going to switch on the capability for exports to take place. We're just finalizing some logistical issues around that, and this will enable those who are doing business in the country to get their products even beyond the borders of South Africa. From a private sector perspective, we have been able to secure commitments, localization commitments from those who come from these industries, and the same talks to this industry. I mean, if you think of any construction project, at the end, there might be other things like furniture that are required and electronics, etc. Oh, sorry, someone is not muted. Can you please mute Agasan Chetty, please? Okay. So what we have done as Party African is in securing all of this. Sorry, can Pagasan mute? Can you please mute?
Colleagues, can you please mute if
you'll see another set of gates open coming in.
I think Pagasan is
I
the one
think
that
it's
needs to be muted.
Pragasan. Pragasan, please can you mute?
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you for that. Apologies for that. Thanks, Alicia. Okay, so what we have done in order to ensure that those who want to buy local can easily find each other is or can easily find suppliers is we've created a portal called Market Access Platform, where our members are then registered according to the different sectors which they come from, and the suppliers who are looking for products can then go into that platform and find those suppliers. It will serve the same purpose served by CSD in the public sector. So you want to do business with government, you go into the CSD, you register yourself, and the public servants or the civil servants will then utilize that to find suppliers that they can request quotes from and ultimately buy from. And this will serve the same purpose for the private sector. Anyone with a infrastructure project who wants a specific item, be it steel, be it cement, be it tooling, anything that you're required to buy, as someone who is responsible for supply chain in that project, you'll be able to go onto the Market Access Platform, do a search for those suppliers, including those in your own area. If you have procurement targets that says you want to buy from transformed entities or black-owned companies or women-owned or white-owned or whatever it is your need is, you can do that search, drill it down to that level and buy from a company that will sell you locally made products and help you achieve your procurement goals. And so just to summarize, in the private sector, we secure localization commitments from the private sector. We ask them to identify items that they're going to buy locally. We then identify suitable companies that can then supply them with those items. Both the corporate and the buyers are registered on MEP, and even on MEP, the benefit is that you can even advertise tenders as a private sector entity. And the only people who will be able to see those tenders and respond to them are local producers. What that does is that it enables us to ensure that all these major projects, all of this major procurement spend is directed to local procurement. We also have targeted access to market programs where our members are able to bid to buyers, and this is just an example with the Franchise Association of South Africa. We have a workshop where the companies bid to buyers, franchisors, and franchisees, and they're then able to secure procurement opportunities. For the COVID-19 pandemic, we're able to create a portal where private sector health practitioners could go and find that which was required to help the country respond to the pandemic, especially for use by frontline healthcare workers. So this included plastic aprons, isolation gowns, surgical masks, respirators, medical grade sanitizers, and sterile gloves. And all of this was sourced in South Africa. Once we switched on the portal, we made it easy for those who are buying to buy these items locally. We are doing the same with other industries. We've now created a portal for furniture, and we will continue to do that across other industries as the need arises. We have other ways in which we support local producers through the Buy Local Expo, which is our own exhibition, which took place 2 weeks ago. More than 200 exhibitors showcased to buyers. We did matchmaking at that platform. We have other third-party expos where we go and buy space for our guys to go and exhibit and showcase their products. So on our website, we list products per sector. In the public sector, especially, if you think of the infrastructure projects that are coming for this construction industry, what we've done is we've integrated our database with the CSD. So every member of Party African who indicates that they want to do business with government and are not necessarily registered in the CSD, we're able to push their information there. We're hoping to switch this functionality on in the next couple of weeks. We also monitor tenders, and through monitoring of tenders, we lobby government to ensure that those tenders have provisions, because they are allowed to do that, include a provision that says when we buy this cement or this tooling equipment, we are going to buy it from local producers or from those who can demonstrate that they're going to supply locally made products. That is going to really help. With the promulgating of the procurement bill, it gives an opportunity to again reinstate what was known as designations, where basically government designated items and chose items that when they buy, they're going to buy locally. And so we are reintroducing that through the development of the regulations to give effect to the provisions of the Act. We're developing regulations, we're working with National Treasury, we've made submissions for those sectors, including a lot of those that are critical to infrastructure and construction, that they be included. And this includes a lot of steel items, this includes cement itself, and other items like transformers and those who are part of that whole value chain that would benefit when buying is done for infrastructure projects in the country. This is not necessarily for this conversation, but I thought I must just touch on it, the fact that we then educate consumers on the importance of buying local, and we make platforms available for our members who have consumer-facing products to be able to sell their products at third-party expos, at markets, at fairs, on the different online stores that I spoke about. We have social media campaigns where we profile our members. We have activations around Black Friday, around back to school, around the festive season, including those around local fashion. The question might arise as I conclude, Alicia, is the question might arise as to how much it costs to be a member of Pan African, so you can benefit from these value propositions that I took our delegates through. It's not expensive. There is perception that it's expensive. It's not expensive. For entry level, the entry level fee is 500 rands, and this is for anyone with turnover between 1 rand and 5 million rands. That's 500 rands per annum, excluding VAT, and it's tiered, as you see on the screen, with the maximum being 100,000 rands, and this is for companies with turnover of 100 million rands and above. As I conclude, I want to quickly, take you through a campaign that we have been rolling out, and we will continue to roll out, which seeks to ensure that anyone who makes a purchasing decision chooses locally made products.
There's a voice that is calling, loudly calling, day by day, the voice of the future.
When I started my business, all I wanted was to create jobs and a legacy for the next generation, because I see opportunity when others see impossibility.
It all started with a thought and then a seed in the garden, which grew into my very own farm that feeds the whole nation daily.
Cotton silk and a little bit of treasure. I create masterpieces that give South Africans an identity, comfort, and confidence, because when you look good, you feel good.
From the factory workers to the warehouse and then over the seas, I want to show the world what proudly South African looks like. It all started with just some ink on paper and inspiration to bring people together. With my furniture, I now help create spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and authentic to human life and connection.
I've always been driven by curiosity. It fueled my dreams to create automobiles that accelerate our nation into greater possibilities and the beauty of the unknown.
I was born into a rainbow nation. My life has been full of colors and mixed flavors. And when I started my bakery, I wanted to share that joy with the world and with South Africans in particular.
All I ever dreamt of was to be a bird and fly high. And now I have the wings to help others fulfill their dreams of flying high too.
But it can only be a dream until you make it a reality. All they need is your faith, your trust, your loyalty, your appreciation.
And most importantly,
Your support
because supporting local businesses
helps create jobs
And secures our future.
South Africa, their future is in your hands. So what are you going to do about it? Be proudly South African. Buy local to create jobs.
Thank you. And that's our rallying call to everyone to ensure that when they make purchasing decisions, they choose locally made products and that they help revive those sectors that need much needed support, but also, ensure that those industries that are competitive can keep their doors open, those factories that are helping us, like the AMSA example that was given, get the necessary support from the procurement spend that we know is already being spent in the country in order to retain jobs and create much needed job opportunities. Thank you, Program Director. I appreciate the opportunity given to me.
Thank you, CEO. I have just one question from social media for you. The question is Proudly South African looking into, or working with the BEE Commission? We feel like it's so important. We do a lot from a local perspective, but we just don't see it in terms of BEE. Will there be in the future something related to localization on the BEE scorecard?
So the scorecard has what is called empowered provisions, and those empowered provisions talk to localization as well. And those are some of the things that where moratorium has been placed, and there is a conversation happening between us and the DTIC's BEE policy unit as well as the BEE Commission to try and lift that moratorium by dealing with those specific items that resulted in the moratorium being placed. And once that has been lifted, you are going to then start seeing, as part of the scorecard, and especially around preferential procurement, points being given for buying local and specifically for localization efforts being made by the measured entities. And so that conversation has been happening for a few months between us and the policy unit at the DTIC as well as the BEE Commission. That will definitely come.
All right, thank you so much. That's it for the questions for yourself. And thank you for that presentation. Colleagues, we move over to our last speaker for this morning, Pragasan Chetty from MIBT. And Pragasan will take us through or talk us through local and eco-friendly buildings in South Africa. Over to you, Pragasan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Pragasan, yes, you are audible. Thank you.
All right. I wish, please help me with my presentation because I can't move up and down on this presentation. Let me start by first apologizing to you. I didn't realize I was not on mute. Secondly, I was only told about this presentation this morning, so I had to change a few things around.
Sure.
All right.
No
Can we get to the next? All right. Can we get to the next slide? We talk about innovation in South Africa and in construction like it's an alien word, where we are still constrained by conventional construction, and there's a perception that people don't want to change. This is a wall that we built at MTN at their national distribution warehouse in Midrand. It's 94 meters long, 6 meters high, and it does not have a foundation and nothing is holding it at the top. And this wall was built in 12 days. So that's hardly a myth. We're a proudly South African company. All our materials are locally procured except for 12%, which we have to bring in because there is no local supply of styrene being manufactured anywhere in the whole of Africa. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. We need to get to this level. Innovation means change. Previously, we used to talk about death and taxes being inevitable, but I'd like to postulate that change is now inevitable. Next slide. We talked about affordable housing at a conference that was held at UCT. and it specifically was about innovation in affordable housing, sustainability, and about greenwashing. If we have to address what our housing challenges are, specifically in the affordable housing market, if we think we're going to do it conventionally, we are wrong. Because if we could do it, the problem would have not arisen in the first place. My view is that we have to look at alternative ways of building instead of keep on going with the with the brick and mortar. Green building is sustainable architecture. But for green to be really green, there has to be an embracement of technology that does not use too much of energy in the production of it. And that is the actual quantification of embodied energy in the building materials. Next slide, please. We have, prior to COVID, a demand of 80,000 units annually, below the 1.3 million rand threshold in this country. The best the market was returning before COVID was 20,000 units annually. Post-COVID, that number of units being delivered annually under 1.3 million is hovering between 14,500 to 15,000. Last year, the industry only returned 14,500 units annually. Next slide. We now are living in a cost of living economy, where previously people never really mentioned that. And what does that actually mean? It means people want to downsize, but they want to use the existing properties to build rapidly. You don't want to have the situation of building conventionally, destruction of the property, the garden, and trying to still achieve your livable area and space. We are a proud South African company, and we build these units using zero water on a construction site. Where have you ever thought about the concept of no hosepipe, no wheelbarrow, no spade on a construction site? But this is what we do. Next slide, please. This is our idea of affordable housing. And in our view, you cannot be innovative and predictable and not know your costing. So we're not shy to talk about this. The banks are crazy about our technology. All the banks will afford us not only end user bonds, but also development finance for the structures. The tool that is being used in South Africa currently is called EDGE, and this is to determine how green the houses are. It's an IFC tool, and I must confess I got into trouble with Green Building Council of South Africa and IFC in terms of what I said about greenwashing. It's a very important term worldwide for manufacturing. And that means what it implies is that people are talking about the house being green, but it actually isn't. There isn't a quantification of embodied energy. There isn't a genuine reduction of 20% of post-construction energy costs or pre-construction water usage and that sort of thing. If you look at what housing costs in this country and how long it takes to build, we need to address that and really deliver on time. So if you look at the house on the top left-hand corner, that's our idea of a 40 square meter BNG house or an RDP. But I refuse to build an RDP because it's not green. And everything I want to do has to be sustainable, has to be green really. And that house costs 242,000 rands with labor. But we have such a ubiquitous system that we don't have to transport a technical team from our factory in Littleton Centurion to build in KZN or rural areas in the Eastern Cape, because we can actually train local labor in 1 day on how to build with our system. The house on the bottom right-hand corner is our idea of a 62 square meter house. And this is where the banks are really crazy about us. This house takes 13 days to build complete, painted, electrical, plumbing, and that's on average about under 600,000 rands at this point in time, actual cost of company. Next slide, please. The houses on the left, are the designs that we use in South Africa to build at this point in time. I think we're robbing end users of the choice to live in smarter houses. The houses on the right are all the designs we want to embrace now. And that's an 80 square meter house, and that takes 21 days to build. And that's still under 1.3 million rands. Next slide, please. This is a panel that we manufacture at our factory in Littleton in Centurion. All our materials for the manufacturing of the panels is 88% local and only 12% imported. And that is the styrene I mentioned earlier. Everything else that goes into the house is locally manufactured. From the aluminum windows to the zinc aluminum roofs, I think the only import here is the solar panel. And this house takes 6 days to build. It is 60% stronger than a 9-inch clay brick house. Next slide, please. So in terms of being competitive in the local environment, there's a common fallacy that if you're building with alternative building systems, you have to be cheaper than the normal brick and mortar, which is actually not the case. The capex to set up alternative building structures, factories, and just the certification process with the regulatory authority called AGRIMA is considerably expensive. It's almost prohibitive to actually set up and build conventionally. Next slide, please. I think from a proudly South African perspective, this slide is very important. Innovation does come at a price, and that capex is almost prohibitive to actually wanting to be innovative. There's no instant gratification or revolutions in the construction environment, only incremental changes. But if we can save water, time, which is a critical factor, decrease the energy consumption in the property, and leave a legacy of a very smart project that the homeowner can be proud of, then we have to look at innovation. Next slide, please. These are the challenges that any entrepreneur wanting to set up will have to go through. The last part talks about lack of consumer understanding of the regulations, perception versus reality, historical legacies of new technologies, and a genuine ineptitude to change. Well, I can tell you this much. I've built in the townships, in lots of townships, and I can tell you right now, my own understanding is that people genuinely want to change, especially the younger generation. If there's a genuine, tangible energy saving consideration, qualitative issues that are being addressed, and the house is actually green, not just perceived to be green. Next slide, please. Well, we want to get out of this cycle. This is a complete vicious cycle that continues to run on its own. Until we do things differently and do different things, all we are doing is competing in the same cycle. And differentiation has got to be fundamental in what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. Allianz talks about the top 5 risks for engineering and construction companies worldwide. Business interruption is very high, natural catastrophes, but the energy crisis is critical, and this is not just for South Africa, it's for worldwide. But one of the most critical factors happens to be the shortage of skilled workforce. Now, we know what's happening in our construction industry, but if we continue to beat the drum about a lack of skills and not do anything about it, all we're doing is repeating more of the same. What we have in terms of what we do in innovation and in new building construction is that we actually have a SACWA level 2 to a 5 accreditation, where we can train people who have never been on a construction site in their lives in 2 days to build with our system. And there you go. To give you an idea, just on that particular example, we once built 18 classrooms of 56 square meters for the King Insa FET College in the Eastern Cape. That's 3 different campuses, about 60 km apart. We built all 18 classrooms in 22 days, simply because we went down with a team of 8 and hired 36 local laborers, local people who have never been on a construction site, and they were able to achieve this feat. Next slide, please. We are in a situation where we know we have challenges with our electricity supply. If a brick takes 2 days to be manufactured and you have to use energy to manufacture it by baking it, surely we are looking at a product where we have zero energy in the manufacturing of the product. And that is what we do. Our production process is a complete exothermic reaction. It's a chemical process. Next slide, please. This is the process of manufacturing a clay brick. I think we all know this. But the embodied energy is not being quantified in brick manufacturing. Next slide, please. So our process is a very localized process. It's all in-house. What we do is we take away the wet works from a construction site. And the more we take the wet works away from a construction site, the greener the site becomes, the cleaner the site becomes, and the smarter and faster your construction becomes. Next slide. I spoke to you about what EDGE is. EDGE talks about 20% of reduction of energy consumption during the life cycle of the house. And it talks about the reduction of 20% of water consumption. Well, the reality is, it should be talking about water prior to during the construction, sorry. And it also talks about the utilization of 20% of innovative building technologies. That's not being done, but still the EDGE certification is being granted. Next slide, please. This is the only AI-generated slide in this entire presentation, and I do apologize. But it had to be, because if you ask any builder or any developer in this country, how do you measure your actual water consumption on a construction site? It ranges in terms of answers. But the global average to build a 60 square meter house from inception to finalization during construction is a low of 28,000 liters of water to a high of 45,000 liters of water. This is taking into consideration the concept of circularity, which I know broadly South Africa is embracing. You need to understand the land to stand kind of, or end-to-end kind of concept of how the material is manufactured and the actual water consumption and energy consumption. Next slide, please. That speaks for itself, but we use zero water on the construction site. We also reduce significantly the cement consumption because of polystyrene voids, which actually adds to thermal efficiency as well. Next slide. I think I want to spend a little bit of time talking about greenwashing. Greenwashing doesn't just exist in the construction environment. It's actually all over the shore, whether it's detergents or lighting or any sort of product that is being manufactured locally. People are looking to say that the product is green because consumers are now changing their minds and their views and their perception, and they want to go as green as possible. But the idea is to not lie to the client and say, no, my product is green. The biggest case of greenwashing I can think about in the world happens to be VW's Dieselgate scandal, which the last time it was calculated, they were still suffering and paying for about $28 billion worth of reputational and brand risk together with the actual fines. Next slide, please. We need to meet every single one of these 7 considerations. This is not being done in the construction environment. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. We all know how important ESG is, but Again, it comes down to a consideration of greenwashing. People talk it, people want to talk about ESG, but if you actually look at how it's being applied in the construction industry or the manufacturing industry, it leaves a lot to be desired, which comes back to say ESG is not what it's purported to be. But we know that we need to embrace ESG as part of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Next slide, please. You can pass the slide. Next slide. The concept of circularity is critical in terms of green building and being able to reuse and renew. Just to dump 1 cubic meter of construction waste in South Africa right now is about 750 Rand to about 1,250 Rand per cube, dependent on where you are, and that does not include the transport to site. We have to reduce this. Our complete rubble removal from a site is less than 1.5 to 2% of what the actual construction site consumption is. Next slide, please. So this is our units built in Australia. This is the #1 technology all over the world. And the fact that we're the only ones doing this in Africa currently is a bit sad. We should have more companies embracing alternative building technologies. Next slide. This is Highland Gate Golf Estate. We're not constrained to being a low-cost model. We range across the board from educational, health, residential, commercial, industrial. Next slide. Well, this is our best client, built his 256 square meter house in Tierpool in Garsfontein in 28 days complete. Next slide, please. You can carry on with the slides now. You can pass the slide. This is just to tell you what it looks like. Carry on. Next slide. The banks really, really need to use our ESG and ESG credentials, as well as the points in terms of their considerations for EDGE certification and in affordable housing. And it makes commercial sense for them, considering that their risks are mitigated because of the speed of construction. Next slide. Next slide. It's a 70-year-old technology that we're doing, that we are manufacturing in Africa. It's being embraced all over the world. And the question I often I'm asked is, how come your technology is not more readily deployed and more available? I'm still searching for the answer to that. Next slide. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for that presentation. You guys are doing an absolutely amazing job, within the sector. I don't see any questions for you. I just, I thought while we look at or maybe perhaps there will be something in the chat box shortly, but I thought I should ask in terms of, when we recruit companies onto the membership database as member companies, one of the 4 key criteria is environmental standards or environmental practices. And oftentimes, companies will ask us, they say, I understand local content, I understand quality, I understand labor, but I just don't understand why I need to have environmental policies. And I think when we look at the construction industry, it's one of those industries or sectors that absolutely needs to adopt environmental practices in order to remain, viable in the economy. So sustainable construction is so important. And I know you said 7 principles of green building, and almost none of them are being adhered to. Do you think there's a reason why companies are not adopting the environmental or sustainable practices around construction?
Absolutely. I just want to correct you there. I didn't say almost none of the principles are being adopted. I said none of these principles are being adopted together. So it's not all 7 at the same time.
All right. Apologies for that.
No worries. So my view is the short answer is to be sustainable is not easy. Like it's more expensive to eat healthy, it's also more expensive to be sustainable. And with construction operating in such tight margins in South Africa, there's often a shortcut to cutting down your sustainability features just to meet the bottom line expectation. That is my short view on it.
All right. Thank you so much for that. There isn't any questions for yourself. I think you've covered everything. Thank you very much for that. And I don't see any other questions for any of the other speakers. So I think we have answered our audience adequately. Just as a parting shot from my side, from a sustainable construction practice, I think what we've gained from all of the speakers this morning is that environmental practices and sustainability in the construction industry is a non-negotiable at this present time. A circular economy, promotes sustainable resource management, and it also reduces reliance on finite resources. I think one of the misconceptions in South Africa is that because we live in South Africa, we have an infinite abundance of natural resources. And from the speakers, we've heard it is actually a finite resources. They are becoming depleted, and in order for us to sustain this industry and ensure, because it's contributing to the economy in a major way, and it's also one of the largest contributors to the employment or job creations in South Africa. So adopting a circular economy and environmental practices is so important to reduce our reliance on finite resources, and a circular economy will foster long-term economic stability in this industry. So to all of our speakers, thank you very much. I think even though we had different speakers from different companies, there was one golden thread that brought it all together, that we need a circular economy to sustain and grow the construction industry in South Africa. Amidst all of our challenges, it still remains one of the sectors that contributes largely to the local economy. Thank you to every one of our speakers this morning. You are sector experts, and you've contributed so valuably to us and to everyone on the call today. So thank you for your presentations, and thank you to everyone that has joined us this morning. We look forward to seeing you soon on one of our other webinars. Take care and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good. How's it? Where are you?